Welcome to Tales from a Retro Gamer, episode number 9. Now, you've probably seen in the news the last couple of days, and it's been all over social media, the so-called cancellation or death of Mad Magazine. Now, that's a bit of an exaggeration. The magazine is being scaled way, way back, and that's very sad. But it's not quite canceled. It's just drastically reduced in form. Now, I'm going to read a quick press release from Mad, from the publisher DC Comics, just to tell you exactly what's going on. I'm really sad about Mad going, pretty much, mostly going away. But there will be Mad Magazine in some form for the foreseeable future. So let me read that real quick for you, just to let you know exactly what's going on with Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine is halting the publication of new content and vanishing from newsstands after its August issue. After that, issues will be available only through comic book stores and subscriptions and specialty shops. And those issues will only have material reprinted from their 67-year history. That's right, Mad Magazine started in 1952 in comic book form. Then in 1955, they switched to the more familiar magazine format. And for years and years, it's been a great parody publication. But to continue the press release, however, the magazine will continue to publish its end-of-year special, which will feature some new content. Plus, there will be books and special collections published from time to time. So that's what's going on. Mad hasn't been completely canceled, but it's drastically reduced from what a lot of us grew up reading and loving. Now, I grew up reading Mad. I've been a huge fan of it ever since I was able to read. They've parodied a lot of my favorite things, from movies to TV shows to music to superheroes. So many movie parodies. I mean, if there's a movie you like from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, there's probably a parody of it in some issue of some magazine. And what I like even better, so as a kid, when I would read these parodies, for me it was just more of that content. Like if there was a Superman issue, wow, cool, more Superman. Now they're making fun of Superman, but you kind of feel like the writers and artists sort of love what they're making fun of. Great magazine, really had a lot of fun reading it growing up, and big part of my childhood. Better yet, even better than the movie and TV parodies, were the just satire of everyday life. Everything from politics to religion to chores to hobbies to self-help, you name it. If there's anything you deal with throughout life, then Mad Magazine has parodied it. Bowling, I mean, just you name it. If there's a topic, Mad has covered it. And see, Mad sort of made, as a kid growing up reading it, and you read these parodies, you sort of felt like the writers and artists were sort of in on the joke that is life. Now, sometimes life can seem cruel and kind of ridiculous and nonsensical. Politicians and teachers can sort of do things that you're like, what? Well, you read Mad Magazine, and the stories and the strips in there, you could relate to them because they would sort of make fun of life as you went along with it. They really kind of helped you understand life as you went along, sort of helped you laugh at life a little bit, laugh at yourself, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some of my favorite throughout the history, the 67-year history of Mad Magazine, just countless brilliant cartoonists, writers, artists, people like Al Jaffe, who did the famous Mad fold-ins for years and years. Some of the newer issues of Mad had Peter Bagge, the artist and writer of Hate, Don Martin, Jack Davis, the list goes on and on. Probably my favorite recurring feature in Mad Magazine was The Lighter Side by Dave Berg. That poked fun of so much of what I could relate with, like growing up in suburbia. There were just so many things it would make fun of. So just Google The Lighter Side for Mad Magazine, and you can find a lot of those strips online. Now, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I didn't have a ton of money growing up. I would read magazines and comics and stuff at grocery stores, convenience stores, and all that. And I did that for Mad Magazine as well. I did buy some copies when I could. When I had a little extra money, my mom would take me to half-price books, and it was always a thrill to find a copy of Mad Magazine for half of cover price. And I really hit the jackpot, I thought, one day. In the late 70s, as a kid, we would occasionally go to thrift stores like Thrift Town, which was our favorite. So now, going to thrift stores and all that kind of stuff is sort of considered cool because of the nostalgia craze. Young people think it's cool. You might get some retro clothing, some Halloween costumes, some vintage collectibles, all that kind of stuff, records. It wasn't really considered cool in the 70s and 80s, especially the 80s when fashion was such a thing, and you had to have an Izod or a polo shirt or an OP shirt. Labels were really big in the 80s, And your friends at school, if they found out you went to a thrift store, they just associated that with you being poor or needy or just kind of pathetic. So I loved going to thrift stores, but it's not something I talked to my friends at school about because that would get you made fun of. Well, one special Friday night, we had gone out to eat as we usually did on Fridays. We stopped by Thrift Town afterwards, and they had 10 Mad magazines priced at 10 cents each. This was awesome because I got $1 a week for allowance, so I could buy all 10. My dad kicked in a little bit for tax, so I went home that night with 10 Mad magazines. I was so freaking excited. I couldn't hardly contain myself. I probably read every bit of them over that weekend. I'm sure I read a few that night and got up Saturday morning, and in Saturday morning cartoons and the commercials, I'm sure I was reading those Mads. Now, throughout the years, this is a video game show, and so I am going to be talking a little bit about Mad video game parodies. And I've got a collection of those I want to show you real quick. One of my favorite Mad covers is Mad Invaders. Really neat Space Invaders parody. You gotta love that. And Mad did a really good parody of War Games, the famous 1980s movie with Matthew Broderick. Pretty cool cover there. And you gotta love the Mario and Luigi cover. Very colorful, very neat. And in this issue, they smash Nintendo video games, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and Married with Children. A lot of pop culture parodies in Mad. My favorite Mad cover is this one because it's like a riff on Time Magazine's Man of the Year. It says Mad video game star Irving Pack as Man of the Year. Really, really cool. That's a cool looking magazine that you can put on your wall. Love it. One of my favorite issues of Mad Magazine has a cover feature called 50 Worst Things About Video Games. You know, just annoying tropes and just things that, if you play a lot of video games, things that come up pretty frequently. Let's see, I'll go through and read a few of them. Number 23 is having to level up your character in role-playing games to the point where it requires more work than your actual job. A lot of role-playing games, you know, take over 100 hours to play, and some of them you're just spent, a lot of that time is just spent grinding. That can be a little annoying. And let's see, number 12, all tasks. So you got kind of a first-person shooter thing there. All tasks that involve searching for keys to open a door, secret passageways, treasure chests, or anything else crucial to your success. You mean a character running around tirelessly with 10 machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammo can't just shoot a freaking door open? We've all been there. Number 4. Now, this may bug some of you Sega fans there, but, just bear with me. Sega's long, pathetic parade of short-lived console systems, from the Sega CD to the 32X to the Saturn to the Dreamcast, establishing a legacy of failure on its way to rivaling that of the Chicago Cubs. Now, sorry Sega fans, I actually love all 4 of those systems, but they definitely were pulled from the market way before Sega wanted them to be, so you kind of get it. Now, number 1 in this is actually pretty dated. This magazine is probably from the 90s, early 2000s. And the number 1 complaint is that game designers who can't understand why more women don't play video games. And you can see the scantily clad, big-boobed women there, and it goes on about that. Anyway, just a little look into the past of one of my favorite issues of Mad. Pretty cool stuff. Now, Mad Magazine had a lot of, several magazines that were copies, competitors. Anything that's super popular is going to have its imitators. Now, 2 of the key ones I wanted to show you. The biggest one was Cracked. That one ran probably around 100, probably over 100. Actually, this is issue number 200, so it ran a really long time. It was a very successful magazine. And you can see they did their War Games parody as well. The second biggest Mad imitator, the second most successful one, was actually published by Marvel Comics. And that's Crazy. And you can see he's playing Space War here, and he's actually getting shot at by the machine. So anyway, that's just a look at some Mad Magazine's issues and their imitators. Now, Mad had a huge societal impact. I mean, from actors, artists, writers, just people in general. Big fans of Mad Magazine, very highly influenced by it. A lot of people's first look at satire and that kind of thing was through Mad Magazine. So I'm going to read what Weird Al Yankovic tweeted right after he heard about the fact that Mad Magazine is more or less going away. He goes, "I am profoundly sad to hear that after 67 years, Mad Magazine is ceasing publication. I can't begin to describe the impact it had on me as a young kid. It's pretty much the reason I turned out weird. Goodbye to one of the all-time greatest American institutions." Now, speaking of American institutions, Mad was just brutal at, parodying American institutions, like I said earlier, whether it was politics or religion or school or church or anything else like that, just day-to-day life. Brilliant magazine. Now, one person that Mad Magazine had an absolutely huge influence on was probably the most famous movie critic of all time, Roger Ebert, the late, great Roger Ebert. Now, reading Mad Magazine sort of helped him decide his career, what he wanted to do with his life, become a movie critic. So in the introduction to his trade paperback, Mad About the Movies, which was published in 1998, he said, "I learned to be a movie critic by reading Mad Magazine. Mad's parodies made me aware of the machine inside the skin, of the way a movie might look original on the outside, while inside it was just recycling the same old dumb formulas. I did not read the magazine, I plundered it for clues to the universe." Obviously, Roger Ebert, huge fan of Mad. So with Mad basically being cut way back, it's going to have a much less big influence on society, and that's been going on for a while now. The internet has really put a huge damper on the publishing industry. It's really hurt it. More people are looking at Facebook and Instagram, or just reading articles published online. You no longer have to buy paperbacks and magazines to keep entertained at the airport or in line, or just when you're hanging out with nothing to do. You just typically get on your phone or your computer. So the publishing industry has been hurt by the internet, and that definitely includes Mad Magazine. So speaking of Mad Magazine, I did a really in-depth article about Mad Magazine, entire history of the publication, for one of my books, Retro Pop Culture A to Z, from Atari 2600 to Zombie Films. You can find that on Amazon. You can find it on my website, brettweisswords.com. That's Retro Pop Culture A to Z. I do a really deep dive on the whole history of Mad Magazine, so you might want to check it out. If you've enjoyed this video, please click like. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. Long live Mad Magazine. I hope they can continue in some form. I plan on picking up the annual special that comes out. I've been bad about reading Mad recently, but I hope to follow them in their new incarnation, pick up the occasional special. If you guys, what is your experience with Mad Magazine? Did you grow up reading it? Have you just read it only recently? Did you hear it in the news? Did you see it all over social media? Who are some of your favorite writers and artists? Are there any particular strips or movie parodies that you remember from Mad Magazine? If you could just comment below, I'd really appreciate it. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks, and peace out.